I want to talk to you about a certain subject here. Now, full disclosure, I know very little about this subject, but I do have a feeling from looking at the periphery of it that it is central and instrumental to the geopolitical climate right now, and that's to do with something called the Magnitsky Act. Magnitsky Act, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Can you try and explain this to me in the best way you can, for as if I know nothing about it, what it is and why it is so prevalent in the geopolitical climate today?
Certainly, a couple of things. So here's the foundation of the Magnitsky Act. 1990-91, Russia decided that they were not going to be the communist, whatever you want, some people would argue state capitalist nation that they were, and they were going to go into a more traditional market economy. So here's the part that most people in the West, 99.9% of the people don't know. What happened then? What happened at the end of the Soviet Union, and now they're going to go to a capitalist? Most people don't know outside of the West. It was pretty much hidden for various reasons, for obvious reasons. The U.S. then says, we'll help. We'll send some experts over. Experts such as Larry Summers. There's an article people can look at called "The Harvard Boys Go to Russia."
Yeah, I've read it. It's by
they got their guy.
Sirota, was it? Was it David Sirota? I think it was David Sirota. I think it was.
No, another reason they should hate him. So what happens?
As if they need one.
Exactly. The Harvard School, other people from the Chicago School, the neoliberals, the globalists. Right, the people who wrote the book on globalism and neoliberalism, they say, hey, we'll send you some experts, and they say, we're going to do shock therapy. Well, it was all shock and no therapy, number one. Number two, here's what they did. They said to Russia, we're going to help you transition your economy. They came over to pillage it. Yeah. They came over, and it's obvious what they were doing. Wow, we've got an entire country that's selling its resources, its companies, its corporations, and we're going to come over like they do and just buy everything up, threw Russia into an unbelievable economic downturn. Yeah, millions died. People were literally eating pigeons on the street.
In the square within a decade, wasn't it?
Yes, they call it the lost decade. So during that period of time, there were these business people coming over, and they were violating a lot of laws and doing everything they could and paying people with graft and corruption so that they could pick the bones. One of them was Bill Browder.
Right.
Bill Browder was one of these people that came over to do that, working with various entities. Now, the interesting thing about Bill Browder is that his history of working with people related in deep ways to the intelligence community. His Edward Safra was one of his business partners, and of course Edward Safra ran the Republic Bank of New York, which was very much known for like the Iran-Contra affair and all of the dark things going on.
So he's very much an insider.
He was a dark money launderer for intelligence.
Okay.
That was Bill Browder's partner.
Okay.
This guy, let's just say, had passed away, had an untimely demise, shall we say. And
did he fall out of a window?
No, it was a fire.
They usually do.
There was like a fire at his house. So it was, you know how the person dies and then the house catches on fire. He had like his nurse was some guy that looked like, some gigantic, his nurse was like a big guy who was skilled in the martial arts. Okay. This was his nurse.
Okay.
He was known to have a number of bodyguards who were former Israeli Mossad, etc. Okay, so this guy but he reached an untimely demise. Bill Browder gets involved with HSBC. I'm sure you know the history of HSBC, and they're nefarious.
It's a bank that is totally above board.
Exactly.
Nothing nefarious to it.
So we look at Browder, and he was over there pillaging, and he was involved with very, very dark entities. And so eventually, around 2000, Vladimir Putin comes to power. And the U.S. thought, great, he's going to be another Bolton, but the West, he's going to be another Boris Yeltsin. He's just going to hand us the farm. He was very much a nationalist, and he's like, nope, Russia for Russia. And he started prosecuting people, throwing them in jail, etc. Bill Browder leaves the country, he can't come back in, and so basically Browder and his ilk are exposed, and some of them are jailed.
And the whole thing that they've got, it becomes very much more difficult to do.
Right.
They can't basically, I mean, I think of that period of time as the American sort of corporations raping the economy
Exactly.
of Russia.
That's exactly it.
And Putin comes in and pretty much puts a stop
Exactly.
to it, tries to.
Right. So now, what happens with Browder? Interestingly enough, he hooks up with some other people, and they cook up this side. Mikhail Khodorkovsky is one of them. Another person who was a billionaire from Russia who went to jail.
Right.
For his, crooked dealings, and eventually got out of Russia and moved to the UK, and he's an anti-Putin person. And so Bill Browder hooks up with him, and now they apparently cook up this story about basically, Bill Browder was investigated and charged with tax fraud.
Right.
And in absentia, he was convicted of it.
And that's in Russia, yeah?
In Russia. This guy, Sergei Magnitsky. The bottom line was Bill Browder had hired a firm to help him with these tax charges and had been working with him for years on his companies.
Yeah.
Sergei Magnitsky was, an accountant for that firm.
Okay.
After he died, they changed the story and they said Bill Browder said he was a lawyer. And he's really waffled on that. He's a lawyer. Yeah. Sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't.
Yeah.
When Bill Browder was under oath in a case when he was deposed, he admitted that Sergei Magnitsky did not have a law degree and had never been in law school, but that Sergei Magnitsky was in fact his lawyer. So at any rate, he cooks up this story. They have a book written called Red Notice, and he moves forward, and they come up with this plan. They go to the U.S. Congress, and they say, we want you to pass this thing called the Magnitsky Act, and we've got a list of people that will be barred, will never be able to come to the United States. And conveniently and self-servingly, these were the people that were involved in the investigation of Bill Browder. So basically, you couldn't get the people over here so they could tell on him about how dirty it was. Mm-hmm. But they have since taken this is supposedly a Human Rights Act, and now they use this to put sanctions on any person around the world. If they decide they don't like you, they'll sanction you and say it's part of the Magnitsky Global Human Rights thing. So it's just simply a tool now to point people out. It's garbage. The whole story is laughable. In fact, the fable of Bill Browder, it's so obviously laughable that if anyone looks into it, in a matter of minutes, you can go online and find out how preposterous it is. But but now, as we talked about earlier, the machine has decided that it's true.
Okay.
So within that context.
So if I was to think of the Magnitsky Act then sort of like as a Patriot Act but for fraud.
Exactly. And see, it's really a powerful because think about this. It allows them to sanction individuals.
Yeah.
And really, with little or no.
Of course, they do it regularly. They've done it recently with Iranian.
Exactly.
Individuals.
It's a perfect tool. They can now say Gordon Dimmack is sanctioned. It's one person. It's a perfect tool for them, and they're doing it for good, for human rights, human rights. So and I might add this. Meanwhile, Bill Browder is running around the world saying he's Putin's #1 enemy. Putin wants to kill him. It's interesting that he says Putin wants to kill him, but he doesn't have any bodyguards. He wanders around the street, walks in and out of restaurants, and I'm like, well, Putin ain't a very good assassin. If he wants this guy dead, he has less security than me.
I think
I have none.
I think if Putin wanted to kill him, he'd be dead already.
Even alone.
Quite honest.
Exactly.
He would have fell out a window.
Yeah, exactly.
Or been Novichok. We'll get to that.
Exactly.
We'll get to that next because I want to. Thanks very much for that. Yeah. I think I know pretty much now. I think enough to.
And let me add this.
Whenever the Magnitsky Act comes up in conversation or in any news reports in future, I think I'm going to have a fuller picture than before.
And imagine, the last thing I'll say about the Magnitsky Act is this, and here's something interesting. Imagine that someone goes to the U.S. Congress with a story that's easily debunked by the most fundamental. You could sit down, you could take out your phone and debunk Bill Browder's story in 5 minutes. Anyone could. But he goes to Congress. Congress writes legislation and passes legislation, and the Congress signs it. Oh, do you know who sponsored the Magnitsky Act in 2000? When Bill Browder first came to Congress, and when he first started putting legislation through, the first legislation that he got in was sponsored by John McCain and Barack Obama. And Obama hadn't been in Congress for 6 months.
Wow.
But he didn't know. You know what they said? Hey, come on over here, man. You're new, yeah. You put your name on this and sponsor this. You know the game's played. He didn't have a clue what it was.
What a wicked web they weave.
Oh, wait a minute. I have to err. No, it wasn't John McCain. It was Joe Biden.
Oh,